Morning.
I have to leave a little before 10 to get on a conference call, so it's not you.
It's not me. Thank you for saying that, because I would have thought so.
I know. I just wanted to make sure.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Can I hold you up a second? I think I left my phone up there.
Oh, good, good. Okay.
Give me a second.
If it's so good, take your time. Take your time. Morning.
It's already ringing. Oh, you know something else?
Who left his phone
No. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
there? What does that mean? Maybe he stepped out. Did you find it?
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, good,
Oh,
good.
good.
Yeah, please. How are you? Yeah, go ahead. That was my fault. You mean the Monday or Wednesday? The Wednesdays this week. Good morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Getting a lot of echo coming back. So, yeah, well, I've always loved feedback. Okay, we're working on it. It's better. It's better. It's better. Okay, very good. Don't you love it that we have a new system? That's right. We're breaking it in. Okay, well, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. It's good to see you. I don't know about you. I feel the need to pause for a moment over and against what we saw in Minneapolis the other day. I suppose ICE does have a legal mandate, but not to do what they've done, to bring chaos to cities where they were supposed to be peacemakers. So I'll speak for myself and maybe for some, maybe all of you. I don't want to be speaking for everybody, but I feel that we're in a very dangerous moment here. Things have gotten out of control. And I sure hope that calmer forces begin to prevail again, and that we can return somewhat to what we've called normalcy. Also, the brutal killing and then the epithets that were uttered after the ICE person shot her, really just beyond terrible. So let's pause just for a moment of silence, think about Renee Nicole Good, and hope for better times. Okay. Thanks so much to Arthur Lavin for sponsoring the bagels this morning. Yeah, good. And also to Jackie Weiner for picking up the bagels. Arthur, I hate to say it, I think pickup got more applause. It was a crescendo, exactly. Okay, very, very good. Okay, so welcome to live streamers as well. I've marked in very bold ink here, repeat the questions. Let's see if I can notice it so that live streamers can hear not only what I say, but what others say as well. Okay, our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We praise you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who sanctifies us through God's commandments and joining upon us the obligation to immerse ourselves in words of Torah. Amen. Okay, so we're beginning book 2 of the 5 books of Moses, the book of Exodus, known in Hebrew as Sefer Shemot, which is the first non-repetitive word. The Torah begins Ba'ela Shemot. These are the names, but we wouldn't call a book Va'ela. It's too indefinite a word, I suppose, and also a word that repeats. So the custom is to name the book after the first significant word. Vayikra, Leviticus is the first word. Shemot here is the second word. I've always been intrigued by the, let's call it the accidental character of the fact that the book of Exodus is named, I might say mechanically, for the first important word. But it also is an important motif in the book of Exodus. I can think of 5 different elements that are named in the book of Exodus. And by name, I don't mean simply has a name, but are deliberately named, and that the name is often given a description. So I've made a list, maybe you'll think of something else or others, of 5 elements that are named in the book of Exodus. Moses, and the word is given a derivation because he was drawn out of water. Moses is, we might call it, just to use a phrase here, the saved Savior. The one who comes to save the people is himself saved at the beginning of his life. Not that he was conscious or aware of it at the time, but perhaps as he was raised, his birth story was conveyed to him, and having been saved, he now feels some obligation to save others. And I think this is a constant motif in the ancient world, where oftentimes kings have been saved before they ascend to the throne. The second is God. God is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I will be what I will be, or I am what I am. So it's not just that God has the name Elohim or Adonai, but it is explicitly given a derivation. That's what I mean by being named in a descriptive way. The manna in chapter 16, I think it is, when the manna appears, the people say, or somebody, the author says, manhu, what is this? That is an extremely provocative name for the manna. Namely, its meaning is mysterious. What is this? And that what is this is a claim of awe. not a search for an answer, although it may be that as well. What are we confronted with here? What does the fact of this magical food mean about life and our lives? Okay. Also, Israel, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Mamlechet Kohanim v'Goy Gadol, Goy Kadosh. Israel, the Jewish people here at the beginning, is not just given a denotator, here's how we refer to it, but also connotation, what it means to be Israel, what it means to be the Jewish people, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The Mishkan is named. Make me a Mishkan so that I can dwell among the people, from shochein, to dwell. So the tabernacle is named for its function, a place in which we meet God, who comes down, I might say. And down, I don't just mean this spatially, I mean it in terms of something emotional. God is not represented as maintaining God's onlyness, God's transcendence, but the God who cares enough to enter the community, not only through God's words and commandments, but through God's presence. This is the notion of the God who is present. It has an anthropomorphic implication, that God is like an individual who comes to appear or to be among the people. Okay? So Mishkan is not just a proper name, it just doesn't say that's what you're to call it, but it also connotes its function, a place in which God comes to meet the people. So maybe there are others like this, but I think it's fascinating that the mechanically derived name of the book of Exodus, Sefer Shemot. Why is it Shemot? It's the first important word. What else do you want it to be? But it also happens to denote a main theme of the book of Exodus. What is the meaning? What are the meanings of significant elements, people and things in the book? Okay. So, I want to suggest that the book of Exodus as a whole has a simple structure. That is, it can be broken down into what I claim are 5 different blocks of material. And each block is more or less an entity all of its own. Here it is. Chapters 1 through 4. Introductory chapters, early stories, introducing as well Moses and Aaron. Chapters 5 to 11, Moses, Pharaoh, God interacting, the plagues and the liberation, chapters 5 through 11. Chapters 12 through 18, sources of and sources against liberation. What is it that liberates us? And what is it that impedes liberation? And remember, and we'll get here, that there are 3 different impediments that emerge after they pass through the Red Sea. Hunger, enemies, human nature are impediments to the process of liberation. In other words, the Torah here is being dialectical. One of the definitions of dialectic is the yes and the no. I think Diane said it last week. The yes and the yet. Okay? And we have both in chapters 12 through 18. Liberation, freedom, leadership, but also impediments. Don't be naively optimistic. Impediments are always looming. whether from others, whether from nature, the deprivations of nature, or from the problems inherent in what it means to be human. The Bible, I think, does not go as far as Nietzsche does in his description of human nature. Nietzsche says that humanity is an abyss, an Abgrund. The Bible doesn't go that far, of course, but it's realistic about who we are. Chapters 19 through 24, Sinai and law. 10 Commandments, law. Chapters 25 to 40, building the tabernacle, and then dwelling in it. But I think the subject of that is building valid and invalid. What are the sources of valid building? I mean, who are we to build a house for God? What? That's blasphemous, isn't it? And Solomon says so when he dedicates the temple in 1 Kings. He says, I know that not even the heavens above can contain you, let alone this house that I build. Nevertheless, okay, so there are two sources of building a house of God. Valid, which comes from a commandment from God, build me a house, and invalid sources. That is human nature, who builds the golden calf. So that last section, 25 to 40, is subdivided into three parts. The instructions to build, chapter 25 through 31, chapters 32 through 34, the golden calf and its aftermath, 35 to 40. We're going to now build the thing about which we were told, build it, right? Instructions, but the problems, we build it. And at the very end, the tabernacle is completed, and the presence of God fills the tabernacle in such a way that Moses can't get in. Okay? So we have 5 blocks of material. It's an elegantly constructed book with different themes, in a sense, contained within themselves. So what I want to do is now look at the early stories of the book of Exodus in our Torah portion for this week. God does not appear in this story until the end of chapter 2. So the first 2 chapters deal with issues and how people deal with the issues before God enters. Or let's put it this way. If the book of Exodus describes God's saving and commanding acts, saving the people at the Red Sea, liberation, and commanding the people at Mount Sinai, if those are 2 fundamental themes in the book of Exodus, why doesn't the book of Exodus get to it right away? God doesn't appear until 2 chapters of episodes occur. And the question I have for us is, why? What is the meaning of that? If I'm writing the book of Exodus, just say it. I'm going to start with God. God is going to be on my mind as the author. There arose a Pharaoh who didn't know Joseph, and there was this treachery and this servitude. And let's get to the salvation already, folks, because the whole Bible, it has one basic theme. What do we have to do, and what does it take to be servants of God? Or to put it non-theologically, what does it take and what do we have to do to live flourishing lives as individuals and communities? What does it take to do this in a persistent way, not just to have a good time some Monday evening? So why doesn't the book of Exodus, which is all about the fundamentals of that story, freedom and law, there's a nice dialectic there, right? If I'm free, why should I accede to being commanded? Or does being commanded deepen freedom? So let's turn to the beginning and take a look at what we have. Okay, Exodus chapter 1. These are the names of the sons of Israel, B'nai Yisrael. Israel here is Jacob, and these are the particular kids. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each coming with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The total number of persons that were of Jacob's issue, we're still dealing with individuals, came to 70, Joseph being already in Egypt. Joseph died and all his brothers and all that generation. But the Israelites, B'nai Yisrael, these are no longer individuals. This is the community that came out of that particular origin. Okay? So the book of Exodus makes a nice transition from the book of Genesis, which deals with individuals and families, to now the career and destiny of the people. Israel becomes Israel. Israel's children becomes the Israelites, right here. Verse 7, but the Israelites were fertile and prolific. They multiplied and increased. So it's very, very interesting here. They were, it says, Peru v'yishratzu v'yirbu. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Genesis, the first commandment to human beings, which is now implemented by the Israelites in Egypt. Okay, so this is also a creation story. That seems to me the signal that the author is giving us. By saying, be fruitful and multiply, we automatically think about Genesis chapter 1 and creation. When does the creation story end? Never. It takes on different forms. When the people return from Babylonia, the author of the second Isaiah uses creation language for the return to Israel. Recreation, in other words, the creative process is not a one-time thing. It continues. But the Israelites, verse 7, were fertile and prolific. They multiplied and increased very greatly, so that the land was filled with them. A new king arose over Egypt who didn't know Joseph. And he said to his people, look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us. Let us deal shrewdly with them so that they may not increase. Otherwise, in the event of war, they may join our enemies in fighting against us and rise from the ground. So they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. And they built garrison cities for Pharaoh, Pithom, and Ramses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they increased and spread out, so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. So I think this is the first glimmer of what I take to be a major theme of these first 4 chapters, and that is self-liberation, or liberation as resistance. Here the people continue to grow and proliferate in spite of the oppression that is occurring to them. In other words, before God comes to liberate the people are liberating themselves in important ways. And another way of saying this is the people resist the tyranny before God does. Now, if the book of Exodus is the story of God's care for and action on behalf of the people, why does the book start with resistance and the capacity to liberate oneself? That's the question I want to raise for us, so let's go on. Verse 13, the Egyptians ruthlessly imposed upon the Israelites the various labors they had made them to perform, and ruthlessly they made life bitter for them with harsh labor at mortar and bricks and with all sorts of tasks in the field. Okay, so the people nevertheless continue to flourish and to grow, and so Pharaoh doubles down on the persecution. Okay, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. Now, the phrase in Hebrew can be understood as Hebrew midwives or midwives of the Hebrews. If it's a former, they're Israelites. And Rashi says they are Israelites. Turns out to be Moses' mother and Miriam are the two, for Rashi, Yocheved and Miriam. He names them. If they are the midwives of the Hebrews, they're Egyptians. And the Septuagint, the first translation, Greek translation, and Josephus, the great historian, and Bravanel, a great philosopher who led the Jews out of Spain, went with the exiles, claim that these are Egyptian women. Okay, so it can go either way. I want to suggest, though, that it's more powerful if they're Egyptians. Okay. It's a choice, and I can't say that the other choice is wrong. The king of Egypt spoke to, I'm going to say, the midwives of the Hebrews, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah. The problem with my interpretation is these are Semitic words. Shiphrah means beauty, and Puah may mean a delicate flower or a girl. So that's a problem with calling them Egyptians. Saying, when you deliver the Hebrew women, look at the birth stool. If it's a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live. Okay? So that's Pharaoh's new form of persecution. The midwives, fearing God, let's see where that is. V'tirena, from yareh, from to fear. V'tirena ham yaldot et ha-Elohim. The midwives, fearing God, didn't do as the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live. Now, fear of God has several meanings. One of them is literally revering, fearing, being afraid of, being in awe of God. It also is used in the Bible in several cases for conscience. To fear God is to feel devoted to doing the right thing. So with that in mind, it's possible to say that these midwives, these Egyptian midwives, who can go home at night to their families if they obey Pharaoh, resist. And they find a way to save the children because of conscience. In other words, this is, we might say, an early act of civil disobedience on the part of, guess who? People from the domain of the enemies. So right within the community, the Egyptian community, are people who are charging themselves to do the right thing. By the way, there's a famous, maybe apocryphal anecdote about Thoreau and Emerson. So Thoreau was imprisoned for civil disobedience, and evidently Emerson came to visit him, and he said to Thoreau, "What are you doing in there, Henry?" And Thoreau's response is, "The question isn't what am I doing in here, but what are you doing out there?" This situation requires resistance, okay? So immediately, right at the beginning of the book of Exodus, we have resistance to the tyranny that comes paradoxically from within the house of the enemy itself. So, verse 18, the king of Egypt, I don't know how far back I can go here. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this thing, letting the boys live?" And the midwife said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They are vigorous." And so this is either literally true or an excuse. Either, yes, indeed, the Hebrew women are vigorous. You're persecuting them, you're trying to weaken them. They are still vigorous. Or the midwives are making up a story in order to save themselves, but also not to get the Hebrews into trouble. Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They're vigorous. Before the midwife can come to them, they have given birth. And God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and increased greatly. Oh, here we have multiply and increase, again, echoes from the story, the creation story at the beginning. And because the midwives feared God, God established households for them. We don't know exactly what this means. I think the Hebrew word is batim, houses, but it could be gave them some security, gave them husbands, gave them progeny of their own, opened their wombs, and so on. The Pharaoh then charged all his people, saying, "Every boy that is born you shall throw into the Nile and let every girl live." Okay? So now we come to the story of the birth of Moses and the episode that follows, but it only follows a story about the resilience, the morality, if you'll agree with this claim here, of people from the center of the tyranny itself. Resistance from within. People of conscience who are not willing even to endanger themselves to be complicitous in the tyranny. Justice emerges in societies, if it will. That is the urge to justice. Now you can see I'm getting ready to go for it. The urge to justice is inherent in the human breast and can be aroused. We don't need to be commanded from the outside in order to perform acts of conscience with which we are born. So this is also a story about human nature, isn't it? What human beings can be and do. Chapter 2. A certain man of the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. When she saw how beautiful he was, she hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she got a wicker basket for him and caulked it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child into it and placed it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. Okay, so the wicker basket is, the Hebrew, I believe, is aron. Aron, it's not, where are you? What verse? 3. Teva. Teva is the word for ark in Noah's time. So what's the story of Noah? The story of Noah is the story of the saving of a righteous individual. Okay? So danger, but being saved. So that here we have an echo of the Noah story as well. That Moses is kind of like Noah, who is being set out into a kind of an awful situation, but God is saving him. Now, there's no evidence here that it's God who does that, but I think the echo to Noah's Ark is also important. So, the daughter of Pharaoh, verse 5, came down to bathe in the Nile while her maidens walked along the Nile. She spied the basket among the reeds and sent her slave girl to fetch it. When she opened it, she saw that it was a child. And here comes to me one of the most moving moments in the entire Bible. A boy crying. She took pity on it. And she said, this must be a Hebrew child. Now think of this. Here you don't just have an Egyptian like the midwives. You also have an individual from the very center of the tyranny itself. She is the daughter of Pharaoh. And yet she is represented as the savior of Moses. Not just as an action, but because she feels the emotion. In other words, there are the rabbis talk about two ways to pray, keva and kavanah. Keva is following the rules, the fixed liturgy. Please rise for the Shema. And we stand up because that's what the rules say. When I stand up, you don't yet know whether or not I'm just standing and I'm thinking about what I'm going to do after services, or I'm not thinking about the meaning of the Shema at all. I'm doing it in a rote way. And by the way, in our tradition, doing something right, even in a rote way, is a mitzvah. But kavanah means intentionality. That not only am I standing when I'm asked to stand, but I'm doing it for a particular reason. I'm thinking about, I'm feeling the power of the unity of God. Okay? Now, if I'm writing this story, I don't say she took pity on him, because I can't believe that an Egyptian from the center of the tyranny is able to express pity. This is the genius of the author. The author dares to humanize Pharaoh's daughter in an extraordinarily positive way. This is also an element of the resistance to the tyranny. From within the tyranny itself. So, if I'm writing the story about the midwives, because I want to show that resistance can happen from within the house of the perpetrators, I don't need the story of Pharaoh's daughter. I've gone far enough. But this takes it one further degree into the meaning of resistance. Intentionality, purposefulness, awareness. She's not just acting mechanically. She feels the situation of this baby boy. Wow. This is a foreshadowing of the defeat of Pharaoh, isn't it? Where's God? God is not here yet. This is all people doing this. Michael?
I'm having trouble accepting that because
You're having trouble with what I've just said?
I'm having trouble with with your posit that this is an internal conscience
Of her, on her.
and not says in verse 17, the midwives fearing God
Mm-hmm,
did not do as the king of Egypt told them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says again on 21, and because the midwives feared God, he established households for them. That suggests to me that it is their God consciousness that is motivating them to resist, that they're obeying God and not the earthly king, Pharaoh.
Very good. So what Michael has suggested about the midwives is that fearing God, which I have translated as conscience, I'm going to put a couple of words in your mouth,
Sure.
more justly should be understood as something more literal, fearing God, God consciousness. They're doing it out of fear, not out of something internal. So, I mean, that's a very important comment, because when we get to certain moments in Scripture or in any ancient text, and we come to the possibility of translating a word in a variety of ways, let's ask ourselves, well, what are the reasons for doing it one way or another? And we recognize that even though there may be more than one way of interpreting it, from the text itself, because the fear of God is often used in the way that Michael suggests. So that is a natural interpretation. But if we do what we call a word search and ask, how is the word yirah used throughout Scripture? We can find the meaning that I've offered. It's said of Job, it's said of Joseph. I don't think there's an abundance of uses in that sense, but the text permits it. So I have a thesis, and the thesis is that God has not entered the picture yet, and that therefore people are acting as human beings with human motivations and impulses, and that this interpretation is harmonious with that assumption. How firm, how trustworthy, how stable is that assumption? I would say it's not a certitude. It's just a way of trying to understand passages, and especially in the context of individuals in these first chapters acting out of their own impulses, emboldens this interpretation. Now, if I said to you, don't be foolish, agree with what I've said, that would just be preposterous, because there is another way. There's no doubt about it, right? David?
As a mathematician, I want to point out something in support of what you're saying.
Oh, thank you.
Because in this same text, it says that the people increased and multiplied.
Yeah. Mm.
And, we sometimes think of that as just saying the same thing twice. But mathematically, increasing is adding, right?
Yes.
And so we're talking about two different things, adding and multiplying. Now, multiplying refers to the fact that people have offspring. So the people of Israel, the Israelites, grew through the process of producing offspring. But what does adding mean? It means that people who were not originally in the community are becoming part of it. And so I would argue that what's happening is, as you say, people of conscience are looking at what's happening and saying, we don't want to be part of this tyranny, and they are moving to the other side, which is they're joining the Israelites.
And is that adding or multiplying?
That's adding,
That's adding.
yes. Adding is you bring in new ones.
How do you bring in new
Multiplying is
ones?
you produce
I see it's something
offspring.
internal. Ah, this is adding. Good. Okay. Nice to have some support, especially from mathematicians. So that's great. That's great. That's great. Very good. But I do want to underline the partially speculative nature of my interpretation, for better or for worse. I mean, we face this all the time when we're reading texts. Yeah.
I like the understanding of the term, instead of fearing, respecting, because that implies a higher level of consciousness and something that's positive rather than negative.
I like it, and it's also, thanks, it's also about something autonomous, something that emerges from within as a feature of character. Yeah. Jim, yeah, go ahead.
Do you know where the name Tuvia comes? I've heard that applied to Moses as being his Hebrew name.
Right, I don't. Tuvia from tov, from good. Well, it says he was beautiful. What's the Hebrew word here? Kitovhu. Good, often translated goodly, not necessarily good as a moral term, but as an aesthetic term, and that may be where it comes from. Jim?
I'm seeing a parallel here to what happened in Europe in our time. Apparently, prior to the Pharaoh that didn't know Joseph, the Hebrews or Israelites were apparently living comfortably in Egypt because they made no effort to leave.
They were brought down and they were settled.
Yeah. And the same thing, I believe, happened in Europe, where the Jews actually thought they were citizens of these countries, ignoring the fact that they weren't. And some saw what was coming and some didn't. And although this is, to me, it's a good story, I never quite understood why none of the Hebrews didn't leave. They were promised the land of Canaan, but they chose not to leave, so life must have been okay.
Yeah. That's your analogy to Europe, that things went reasonably well for Jews and stayed and didn't
The
recognize.
Hebrews thought, well, yeah, we're citizens of Egypt.
Yeah,
What could go wrong?
yeah, right. But it does say later in the Bible, somewhere in 1 Kings, that the Israelites lived in Egypt for 400 years. I think it says so actually in the Exodus. So there were 400 good years, so to speak. Yeah, right. And that's why they didn't leave.
That's my point.
Yeah, right. Chad?
Well, I have a question. Is there any evidence that the firstborn Hebrews,
That what?
that firstborn males
Yes?
in Egypt were actually killed?
Is that, you're talking about non-biblical evidence for this?
Well, no, because that's hard. Because subsequent Torah, that is never a complaint against the Egyptians that they killed our firstborn.
Oh, I see
There's no
what you mean.
evidence in the Exodus that there was a dearth of firstborn males.
Yeah,
The only killing of firstborn males that occurred was during the 10th plague, and it was of Egyptians.
yeah, all right.
So, it seems like Pharaoh's command was thwarted and never happened based on subsequent Torah.
I want to be sure I understand what you're saying. Is there any evidence for the reality, historical reality of this episode, killing of the firstborn?
Well, no, I'm not going to go that far.
Okay.
It's hard to.
How far are you going?
I'm just saying that subsequent Torah doesn't really support that.
Oh, I see, the Torah itself.
Yeah, there's just no evidence of that.
No evidence in the text.
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
And in fact, when in the Exodus, when we Hebrews are complaining, they don't want to go back to Egypt. They think they had it better there. Who in the world would go back to Egypt when the Pharaoh had killed all the firstborn? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So it just seems never to have happened.
Well, look, I mean, first of all, yeah, I think it's plausible that people want to go back because tyranny is something more global. It doesn't need to affect the day in and day out life of individuals as long as they have their leeks and cucumbers. That's both a reality and a metaphor. People can tolerate a lot in more indirect ways in their lives. So I don't find that problematic that they want to go back. The other reason they want to go back is that going forward faces the unknown. And we see between the Song of the Sea and Mount Sinai all of the problems of moving forward in the wilderness. I don't know the answer to the question, is there any reflection or repetition of this event in subsequent biblical literature? You know, who knows? I mean, Google knows. AI knows whether it's, I hate to say it, oh boy. Now the camel's nose is now under the tent. Yeah, I don't know. And by the way, just to extend the point that you're making, not that you're implying this point, there's no evidence for the 40 years in the wilderness. We would have, if 600,000 males, plus all the females and the children, 3 million people spent 40 years in the wilderness, archaeologists would have found something. So, look, I mean, let me try to make Alter's point. You remember we talked about Alter and his idea about narrative and knowledge, and how the story of Joseph and his brothers brings out a great deal of insight into what it means to be human, and how human beings can act and change. How Judah changes from resenting his father to acknowledging his father's need. How Jacob has said, how Judah repeats what the father said, my wife bore me 2 sons. Now, Judah has already put away the first son, Joseph. He has a chance to do it again. He doesn't do it out of respect and love for his father. So that narrative is not merely fiction in the colloquial sense. Alder's point is that stories are a way of drawing out the complexities of human nature and the human condition. So what do I care that there's no archaeological evidence? Who cares about that? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So the story of the tyranny is really the story of the kinds of things that create deep impediments, deep problems for human beings, and the ways in which we can seek to overcome it. So it's not as so much, I'm going to think about what I'm about to say after I've said it. It's not so much the veracity of the story in terms of its correspondence to the empirical world. Did it happen? But whether or not the story tells us, put it a different way. I think that Aristotle makes this point between history and poetry. That history tells us about the way things are in a particular case. Poetry tells us about the way things always are. And narrative does the same thing. The better the narrative, the more universal the truth, even though it may not have ever happened, paradoxically. Okay, let's go back. So, back to chapter 2, verse 6. When she opened it, the ark, she saw the basket. She saw that it was a child, a boy crying. She took pity on it and said, this must be a Hebrew child. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get you a Hebrew nurse to suckle the child for you? So Miriam was sent out by Yocheved, their mother, to see what would befall this child. Now a certain event has taken place, and Miriam, who is on the watch, springs into action. She knows what to do here. His sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go get you a Hebrew nurse to suckle the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter answered, "Yes." So the girl went and called the child's mother. See, talk about a little irony here. So, the next fact is that Yocheved, not named here, but Moses' mother, now is going to suckle and raise the child. And it happens only because of the what's the word here? The mental dexterity of Miriam, who recognizes an opportunity and springs on it, as well as the goodwill of Pharaoh's daughter, who only wants the best for this baby boy. Okay? That's how it happened. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, verse 9, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I'll pay you wages." Moses' mother gets paid for raising her child. So the woman took the child and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who made him her son. So there must be some sense of amity here, friendship, or at least being comfortable with one. And maybe Pharaoh's daughter said, let the mother raise the child until a certain age, and then we'll adopt the child. However it happened, the child is now being raised a second time in the context of Egyptian culture, which is a necessary condition for Moses to be able to go to Pharaoh and to speak Pharaoh's language. This is the first example of what we call a court Jew. A court Jew is a person who, in the context of a ghettoized separate community that is imperiled because of the larger community's antagonism to this community, the Jewish community needs an emissary, somebody at a time of emergency, or when there needs to be taxation or conscription into a larger army. The community needs a representative to try to make the case for the Jewish community in the court of the overall ruler. Joseph was one of them. Joseph was a court Jew. Theodor Herzl is my favorite example. You know, when Herzl had the idea in the middle 1890s to form some sort of a Jewish independent state, he went to court throughout Europe and Russia trying to get funds from the different governments. Herzl was a Europeanized Jew, much more assimilated than Jewish, but he knew the language. He was also a reporter who wrote for the Neue Freie Presse, the New Free Press in Vienna. So Herzl understood the language of the non-Jewish community in order to be able to speak with and to them while representing the Jewish community. Okay? Because Moses is raised in two ways, by his mother and by Pharaoh's daughter, Moses is now conversant with two different cultures and can go to Pharaoh and speak to him, "Let my people go." So the irony here is that these individuals working together to do what's right for Moses, let's say, have also laid the groundwork, ironically, for Moses being an emissary on behalf of his people to the court. It's a pretty remarkable story, Paul.
Yeah, could you define, if you could, what is meant by when the child grew up?
Yeah.
'Cause I'm thinking to myself, it just means when he was weaned.
When he was
When he was weaned.
weaned.
However, if totally as an Egyptian.
Right.
Whereas if it was until he quote unquote grew up, maybe 6, 7, 8, whatever, he would have that Hebrew identity.
Yes.
And therefore have that little bit of sense of rebelliousness and this is unjust. So did they ever really define what it is?
I don't know the definition, but I think the story gives us the answer. I mean, Moses does go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. So,
That was after he identified as one of them, as an adult.
okay, that may be right. That may be right. Verse 11 of chapter 2, sometime after that, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his kinsfolk and witnessed their labors. So, yeah. So a possible explanation that you're asking about is that Moses spent very little time in his own family, but grew up as an Egyptian, but nevertheless at some later time, not by being raised, identifies with his people.
As a good human.
Yeah, yeah. Does anything really depend on that distinction? In other words, does it matter how he came to have his identity as long as he does, which he clearly does? The difference is that his mother doesn't raise him. He gets it, doesn't teach him.
So is it nature or nurture?
It's a nature and nurture, but at some point he's nurtured. At some point he comes to feel. Doris?
I'm on resistance,
Good.
okay?
You're not resisting.
Is there room in your understanding
Yes.
of chapters 1 and 2 and 3 and 4?
Yes.
Is there room for the fact that these creatures who resist were made in the image and likeness of God?
Yes.
And that likeness is dormant for a while and pops up suddenly with an understanding on the part of these women that this is not the order that internally I was made for. There's something wrong here, and my conscience is pricked, and I act in resistance. Because it doesn't come from nowhere,
I should say.
the resistance. Something embedded in
Yes.
me, because I was created in the
Yeah.
likeness of God, says, once in a while, this is not right.
So
Is there room in your thinking? I think that supports.
there's no room whatsoever. No, here's how I understand what you're saying. I am calling these, let's go for it here, secular stories. These are stories of human beings who are dignified, credible, bright, conscience-laden. These are not just mechanical people. These are real people, but that they're doing it wholly on their own. That's kind of what I'm saying. So this is think of planes, Planes. A plane, a plane, a plane. How many planes of reality are at work here? So far I may be being unfair to myself, but I'll rigidify the difference. This is a one-plane story. This is human beings working with one another. Doris is suggesting, if I understand you, there's another plane here. And I could understand it in your way plus another way. Your way is, look, we're made in the image of God, so we have God consciousness in some sense. However dormant, however unacknowledged, it's there. And that sense of being attached to something higher.
Affinity.
An affinity for godliness. look, I mean, to me, that plane has a more plausible expression than that. God consciousness may be part of it. But, Alter makes the point in this narration and knowledge that human action, human conscience, morality, purposefulness, is God's way of moving the world. That it's not that God has taken our freedom from us, but if we want to ask ourselves, how does God work in the world? We might say, only when there are miracles. We could also say that our endowments, our capacity for moral action, purposeful, for pity, compassion, is God's action. God acts through human freedom. This is it. It's not that God is a puppeteer. God works through human actions. I mean, think of the Joseph story. You meant it for evil, he says to the brothers. God meant it for good. What does that mean? It can mean one of two things. That all along God is handling the whole story. Or that God has endowed us with the capacity to deal with this sort of thing. And God, in a way, steps back and lets our capacity to act in the image of God to our free will. That's how I think of plane 2.
Yes. We could talk about this later. There's one other thing, though. Pre-consciousness. Pre-consciousness. It doesn't have to be full-blown. And, in moral development theory about how a child develops a conscience, how we develop conscience. These women in the beginning, these women catapult from the might makes right theory. So this is Piaget, this is Kohlberg, this is others. Mm-hmm. The name of the woman at Harvard, Carol Gilligan.
Oh,
This
Carol
is
Gilligan.
their theory,
Yeah.
that you start with might makes right. The Pharaoh is right.
Yes.
You start with, I do the right thing because mom and dad will punish me if I don't do the right. They go beyond that, from stage 1 to stage 6 in development theory. It's an amazing thing that they do.
Yeah.
Whether it's your theory or my theory or anybody's theory, this beginning story is unusual,
Absolutely.
cataclysmically
Yeah.
unusual.
Yeah, the author of these stories is one of the great writers in the history of civilization, don't you think?
Yes.
I think it's more important. Thank you for raising that. That's very important. I think a question that we ought to be asking ourselves, and it's the adroitness of the author, that the author doesn't come right out and say, folks, this is what I'm getting at. The author tells a story and leaves it to the reader to try to figure out what is going on here. And it's a good question. Is this just a secular story? Not secular is not a negative term here. Is this a story about human beings interacting, often in their greatness? Or does this also in some way involve God? In one way or another, having endowed us with godly capacities, working through human beings, hovering over the story? I mean, what is the answer to that question? And I think that any specific answer we give to that question is going too far. It raises the question of, do we live in an environment wholly of our human making, which is a wonderful thing, for crying out loud. I mean, we wrote the Fifth Symphony and Falstaff. That's good. Or is there some divine dimension, not necessarily above and below, but intermingled, commingled, that there's a divine dimension in what we do from our origin or from our awareness of larger themes that emerge to us at certain points in our lives. Wow, I didn't realize I was in this story, but I am part of this story. Arthur?
Doris's comment reminds me of another great tension in human life, which is between habit and attention.
Yeah.
Both are essential.
Yeah.
So you get through life, you must have routines that allow you to function.
Absolutely.
But now and then, something pierces the routine and upends everything.
Good. I love the word pierce.
And there's a lot of piercing in this story.
There's a lot.
especially Fair's daughter.
Very good. That's another way of making Doris's point. The piercing alerts us to, gosh, is there something else going on here? To which we can say, I don't have any idea, or we can add something to it. If the Bible's main goal, it's hard to limit it to a main goal, is to instruct us as how to serve God, how to serve something higher than ourselves, how to serve something more eternal than my little life. These stories are infused with the same question, and the piercing I think of the notion of a piece of paper. Here's the secular story, and behind it is, I don't know, the wizard. But these stories puncture, and I'm trying to look through to see what is on the other side there. It's part of the mystery. Manna what is it? What is going on here? Yeah, Lynn.
When you say that you're made in the image of God, would you think about Kabbalah a little bit?
About Kabbalah? Mm-hmm.
How we feel that actual piece is within you?
Yeah.
Or you can feel that the word humane
Yeah.
is how we are in the image of God.
Yeah.
And we, how humane you are and how far you go to being that way.
Yeah.
I see that the Pharaoh's daughter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She was put in a situation of deciding herself that she wanted to have this Hebrew killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's not within her. She's more humane.
Yeah.
She sees the humanity of it, and she has a choice. She chose with her own humanity to save the child. When the Hebrews who delivered when the Hebrew, what do you call it, midwife, they had a choice too.
Yes.
And they made the humane choice as well. And she's doing the same thing because she was put in this scenario.
Yeah. No, I like that. No, Lynn is suggesting a value here of being humane that permeates. You could say from God. When Aristotle talks about the virtues, how to be human, how to be humane, he doesn't bring God in at all. This emerges through habit and through action. So one can look at humane secularly or religiously. But I think that since the Bible is God saturated in some way, not in every story, it's plausible to say that this is also an endowment.
I'm just trying to simplify how we live in the image of God. And humane may be one description or one simple
Of
answer.
God.
How God lives within us.
How God lives within us.
How we live with it as people or as a person. And I think God may be put in us being humane.
Yeah.
Other adjectives you could say
Mhm.
as part of our
Makeup.
our brain, not our brain, but the body is so very complex and why we do certain things we don't know.
All right.
But it's implanted
planted somewhere to be able to become very humane.
And Doris uses the locution made in the image of God, which in a way is kind of a cover-all theme for this sort of theme. What I love about this discussion is that we've opened up possible resonances in the story, which is a tribute to the author. This is not only the story of a people, but it's masterfully written. And the author, what's the author's point of view? I mean, in a certain way, restraint is also a feature of good writing. Not to say everything, but to leave open the interpreter, the auditor, the listener's way of accessing. We all access differently. Let's go on a little bit. So, where are we? Okay, verse 10. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who made him her son. She named him Moses, explaining, I drew him out of water. Okay? So far, we have 5, let me just say it, heroic women doing the work of redemption, of saving, and so on, right? Moses' mother, sister, and the Egyptian woman, and the 2 midwives. Yeah. Let me make this quick gratuitous comment. What kind of a text is the biblical text in terms of gender? It's patriarchal.
Yes.
All the kings are men except one, 45 of them. There are 4 women prophets. All the rest, there's Miriam, there's Deborah, there's, what's her name, Huldah, and there's Nehemiah's wife, something like that. All the rest of the prophets are men. This is a patriarchal text. And yet, right here, at the crucial moment in the story, up to this point, it's all women. Okay? So when you think about the issue of patriarchy, or what kind of a text this is, I'd like to suggest here that this is the return of the repressed in these stories, that the author brings formidable women into the picture. I call this an example of the Bible's counter-narrative, and counter to the patriarchal emphasis. I'm not trying to say the Bible is not patriarchal, by and large, at least quantitatively, but amazing women. Ruth. Without Ruth, there's no King David. Without King David, there's no Messiah. And so on. Without Lot's daughters, there's no Ruth. There's no, and so on and so on. Let's go on. Sometime after that, when Moses, verse 11, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his kinsfolk and witnessed their labors. Paul's point here about when did this come to be? Right away as an infant, his mother is raising him, or much later. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He turned this way and that, and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So, 2 quick verses. What is the principle behind Moses' action? Loyalty to one's own. He saw an Egyptian beating his kinsman, and he comes to the aid of his kinsman. Okay? So, loyalty, fealty to one's own. When he went out the next day, see, I love what's happening here. We have a second story without interruption of the same kind, as if the author of verses 13 and 14 is not satisfied with the principle that operated in the first story. Loyalty is a good thing. Is it enough? So look what the author adroitly does. When he went out the next day, he found 2 Hebrews fighting. This no longer makes possible loyalty to one's own as the principle behind an action. because now they're both his own. The author is saying, I like loyalty as a principle, but it's not enough. When he went out the next day, he found 2 Hebrews fighting. So he said to the offender, the one who did wrongly. Now a second principle arises over the horizon. Justice. The one who did the wrong thing. Why do you strike your fellow? Now look, notice in 4 little verses, the author has told us about 2 fundamental principles that Moses embraces, which are in conflict with one another. Loyalty to one's own and justice. I'm going to bring one of our favorite guys into the picture. That is Plato. In the first book of the Republic, which is all about justice, several options are offered for what is justice. One of them, by Polemachus, says loyalty to your own. But Socrates asks, but what if a member of your tribe does the wrong thing? Does loyalty prevail? Isn't there something higher than loyalty, and that is justice? This very same conflict, which the author here embodies in 4 little verses, is also the main theme of the book 1 of Plato's Republic. So, and notice, by the way, that Moses is both throughout his life. He's loyal to the people, but he's also willing to rebuke the people. If loyalty were the highest good, he wouldn't rebuke them. Whatever you do is right. But because he rebukes them, he's committed to something else. And this gives him woe, doesn't it? So why do you strike your fellow? And he retorted, verse 14, who made you chief and ruler over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Moses was frightened and thought that the matter is known. When Pharaoh learned of the matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh. He arrived in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Okay? So, we have several stories here, right? Involving 6 people, 5 women and 1 man. The man is Moses. Now, verse 16, now the author is going to make a transition. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water. This is that type scene that altar also talks about, the woman at the well. There's Rebecca at the well, there's Rachel at the well, and now there's another. They came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. But shepherds came and drove them off. Moses rose to their defense, and he watered their flock. When they returned to their father, Reuel, he said, and by the way, her father has 4 names in the Hebrew text, and this is one of them. Another one is called Hovab, the son of Reuel, and that drives the interpreters crazy. It just shows, we might say, different authorial strands of literature with different views here. When they returned to their father Reuel, he said, how is it that you come back so soon today? And they answered, an Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. Now, the word for rescue here is hitzilanu, from the root natsal, nun sadi lamed. Notice that the nun has dropped out. Hitzilanu. We don't hear the N sound anymore. And certain letters in the Hebrew alphabet are weak and can drop out. Okay? Natan is a good example. Natan, to give. Nun, tav, nun. The imperative is latet. Both nuns have dropped out. So there are unstable letters in Hebrew grammar. They answered, an Egyptian rescued us, hitzilanu. This is a word that is used, gosh, can I find it? Can I find it? Oh, yes. Go ahead to chapter 3, verse 8, where God says to Moses, I have come down to rescue them. God is now saying to Moses. The word there is lahatzilo, same root, same word, natsal, applied to God, but before that, applied to Moses, which I think is a bit of evidence for my claim that the resistance is also a form of liberation even before God comes into the picture. We human beings can act toward our own freedom. Okay, so let's go on. So they answered, an Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock. And he said to his daughters, where is he then? Why did you leave the man? Ask him in to break bread. Moses consented to stay with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah as wife. She bore a son whom she named Gershom, to be a stranger there, Gershom. For he said, I've been a stranger in a foreign land. I mean, the King James says it more eloquently, a stranger in a strange land. A long time after that, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites were groaning under bondage and cried out. And their cry for help from bondage rose up to God. So, this is the moment, if we can think of this as being a drama on stage. So far, the curtain is closed, and all the action is taking place in front of the curtain. Now the curtain is pulled back, and there's God. God enters the picture only here as an actor. I'm saying it this way, is take account of both what Doris and Lynn have said, which I think is important. But as an actor, so up to this point, in this central book of the Bible, God is not in the picture as an active force, but human beings foreshadow. Not only do they liberate in some way actual people, but they foreshadow the liberation to come. I mean, how astonishing is this? If I'm writing this story, I start right here in an overly simplistic way. I have God. I mean, who's the one who split the Red Sea, who gave the manna in the wilderness, who gave the Ten Commandments, and so on? This is God's story. But not until this moment, taking into account Lynn and Doris, the Lynn-Doris group. Okay? So am I right that there's something quite remarkable that has happened there? There is, as much as God controls things, the author steadfastly believes that human beings have huge capacity, being made in the image of God, having dignity and power of our own. This is not just God's story. This is a story about human greatness as well. Lou, and then Lynn.
I would say there seems to be a lot of schizophrenia in the thumb of these four books of Moses. He's adopted. He's taken in by the daughter of Pharaoh.
Yeah.
What he calls it. Pharaoh said, "Kill all the firstborn." The daughter says, "I'll take him in." But in a sense, he's raised by his mother, actually, because I'm thinking like the British experience. You had the kid, and you gave him over to the nanny or whatever, or the wet nurse or whatever. So, and the first thing that we see, the first action of Moses we see is he's a murderer. The first thing we get introduced to Moses, he's killing someone, and he's adopted by an Egyptian, but he identifies as a Jew.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing I can explain all of this is that is circumcision. Is that when kids get say, oh, you're circumcised, you're a Jew. You know, so that his Jewishness is probably forced upon him rather than something that he, you know, he's developed because of his relationship to his mother, which is, who is his mother? His mother's the princess of Egypt, or is it his biological mother?
So what's your point here, that Moses
Well,
has
I'm
dual
saying-
identity?
So he has so he's sort of like, he starts off like a puppet that you know, God is helping him do all kinds of things, and as he, and this story is as much a development of Moses, you know, to become a self-thinking person, and who's actually, you know, stands up to God and stands up to, you know, asserts his individuality, and that's what makes him a great person. He comes from a mixed up origin, and over the years he develops into something who can talk to God about the covenant, and reason with people, and lead a great nation.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. I think it's a good point. Moses' upbringing is mixed, and he's, in a way, confused about what his primary loyalty is. By the way, when the rabbis speculate, why does Moses not get into the promised land? You know, that happens in Numbers, where the water from the rocks instance, and God says to him, you can't get into the promised land, which seems to be very underdetermined. I mean, why is your life's project aborted right before the very end just because you happen to throw a little water? And all the more so because in Exodus chapter 17, Moses is commanded to throw water on the rock. And so the rabbis have a field day speculating about exactly what crime is commensurate with the punishment. And one interpretation is because Moses killed the Egyptian. So that he, you talk about frenzy, I can't remember the exact word you used here, that Moses lost control, and that anger is really one of the great problems in life, just as a speculation. But it's true, Moses has a very complex upbringing. Lynn?
I was going to ask you to speak to the term, is it timshel? Timshel, a Hebrew word for mayest or thou mayest?
About what?
Isn't timshel, I don't have to say it, timshel, a Hebrew word introduced in Genesis that I first read it in John Steinbeck's East of Eden.
Oh, I don't know that word.
And it was about the difference between being told to do something, being commanded to do something, and you may do something.
Oh.
Right? So
And that distinction.
thou mayest has more to do with conscience.
Oh, I see what you mean. I don't know. Do you know that word, timshol? Okay.
To take ownership.
Okay. Is that what you're pointing to?
Yeah, I'm pointing to what you've been talking about so much today, and the difference when we do something because we think it's commanded by God, or we do something because we follow our conscience.
Yeah.
And I thought timshol meant following one's conscience.
Oh, gosh, I don't know that interpretation.
It's in the Cain and Abel story. God says to Cain,
You can rule over it.
you rule over your
Okay. Oh, mashal, I see what you mean, to rule. I see. Yes.
But timshol is also
Yes.
Where?
punishment about the exile from Eden.
Oh, really?
Timshol, yeah.
Oh, okay. The end of chapter 2, 3, the end of 3. Okay, okay. And what's the distinction? That somehow we are the cause of our action, or we're responding to God?
Well, yeah, that we have free will to follow conscience and to do what is right, what is just.
Right. Yes. But I think as Doris would want to say, that is an endowment from God, that God hovers over our free will. Yeah, right. What's that? What's that? No. Okay. So let's go back just for a second here. Let's go back. Where are we? So, verse 20 of chapter 2. So he said to his daughters, where is he then? Why did you leave the man? No, we've already done that. Verse 23. A long time after that, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites were groaning under the bondage and cried out. And their cry for help from the bondage rose up to God. God heard their moaning. God remembered his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. God looked upon the Israelites and God took notice of them. By the way, the word for taking notice is the word to know. Vayeda Elohim. And we know that in Hebrew, the word know, the gesture of knowing is not just cerebral, it's also emotional. That Adam knew his wife. So this suggests that God not only saw, but that God also felt. So God is now invested, involved, emotionally, if you could say so, in this act of liberation. So what follows? Moses tending the flock, chapter 3, where God calls Moses and puts the process of liberation on the ground into action. So we have a deliberate transition here between what all these individuals did, however we understand it, and God now emerging from God's onlyness front and center as the efficient cause, the cause of the action to follow. So to me, we've talked about it, chapters 1 and 2 are quite remarkable as the introduction to this story of liberation. Okay, Maya. Did you where? Genesis 3, 6. Oh, I see. Mim shal bach, right. You shall, mashal, to rule. Right. In pain you shall bear your children, your urge shall be your husband, and he shall rule over you. Okay, Tim Scholl, yeah. Good. Okay, so next week we're going to continue. Shabbat Shalom.
I retract my argument.
Do you?
Yes.
Why?
Because the subject is the person, not God. There's no active component. In other words, fearing God is an internal experience of the person.
But
so God is not yet introduced. I agree with that.
Well, I don't know that God isn't introduced. I mean, if you think of this story as continuing Genesis, God is everywhere, presupposed. And fearing God, no, I think your interpretation is a plausible one. Fearing God in the more colloquial sense.
Well, at some level, as I was listening to the conversation, I was thinking, what difference does it make? It's the same thing. It's egocentric to make that distinction.
I don't know if that's true. Conscience is all about me. Fearing God is binary, isn't it? I and God.
Well, I think the notion of free will is kind of naive.
You don't believe in it?
Only within limits. So, I mean, we're born with lots of unconscious mental processes that are not free will. So, and
we overestimate how much of our behavior is conscious.
Yes, when I turned on the news this morning, was that an act of free will? Maybe not, your point is. I had a dream last night, or I thought of something.
Or it's just automatic. It's your habit, and it doesn't. You're not making a conscious choice.
Yeah, yeah. How much weight does feeling free have? How much weight? 0? I feel that I made the choice. Am I totally deceiving myself?
I just don't know if it's black and white.
Well, it may not be black and white. Context, past, of course. But that's not to say that I'm an automaton just responding to stimuli.
That's right.
There is free will.
That's why I said within limits.
How much of the whole is free will?
Yeah,
I say 75%.
By the way, sorry to keep you. In the prayer book last night, I saw a quote from Martin Buber that, I can't remember exactly, but basically we act as if we're completely independent, and we feel as if we are entirely in the presence of God, but act. We take responsibility for our own actions, something like that. I can't remember, but anyway, that's what
Oh, absolutely.
just leave you to.
Okay, very good, very good.
I have no basis for this comment, but when you talk about Pharaoh's daughter, I think of her as being a person who's barren. Either she's not married or she's barren. She always wants a kid. You always hear about these people that steal babies out of hospitals, and so she wants a baby. She always gets what she wants. She's Pharaoh's daughter. The Pharaoh cannot refuse his daughter of anything, his love. And she acquires Moses that way, rather than all of this motivation.
But that doesn't account for the pity that she feels.
I don't know if she feels pity. I think her motivation is this is just me. I can't. I think it's just, it's like a lot of women, they want a baby.
Yeah. Sounds to me that you're bringing that idea from outside the town.
I am. It's not. I have no basis for this except what you see around you.
It's true, but we have to read the text as the text comes.
It doesn't contradict the text.
It doesn't.
She may also have pity for this baby. It doesn't contradict it.
It's at least complex.
Right.
If your idea is part of the motivation.
Yeah.
And we don't know.
I just think, if I was outside of this and somebody brought the situation to me, I'd say, well, what's happening, etc.
So you don't think that the pity ought to be given more weight than it's due?
No, I don't. I mean, she could have pity for a lot of, all over the place. It just happened that this situation arose. Whether God made the things happen in this order so that she would act that way or whatever, that's also possible. I mean, you can look at it a lot of different ways. I just thought that when I look around what's happening today, and when you talk about the King's Mold, I think that's one of the first instances of anti-Semitism.
Right. I mean,
It really sounds just like we see anti-Semitism today.
Right. I mean, it's one of the virtues of a very spare text.
Yeah, you can do what you want.
It makes room.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's one of its virtues, really, because it invites
It
us.
is. Right. I never heard anybody else talk about it in that fashion. I thought it was interesting. I seem to pull it out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't know where, but
Right.
when I'm looking at it and I try to put in, well, if that happened today, what would I say motivated this woman to do this? Is the way I look a lot of these texts. I say, okay, this happened then. The same kind of thing, maybe slightly different situations because you're not going to have a woman bathing in the Nile.
If we had a full-blown biography or story of Pharaoh's daughter, we'd have enough evidence to be able to tell
do something
whether
about
or not
Right.
yours has plausibility.
Right, whether it
Now,
has any basis or not. That's why I said there's absolutely no, except that I look at it from, if it happened today, what would you read in the newspaper? This woman went,
right,
and you wonder when Moses kills this guy that's beating up a Hebrew, whether that was more intentional or he just lost control or was an accident. He pushed him and he hit his head on a rock and he's killed.
right. Although that does lay foundations for
other
Moses,
things, yes.
for who Moses is. So in
Right.
a way, it's a story of origin.
It's important that it's presented that way, but you don't know really
In itself.
what the whether it was his intent or not.
Well, the author conceals motivation very often.
right.
I think it's good. Love it. Love it.
I just wanted to say my name, David Feldman. Nice to meet you.
Hi,
I
David.
enjoyed your talk wonderfully. I won't get
Oh, good, good, good. David, come back.
Yeah, I hope to come back. Yeah.
Very good. Good to see you. Thanks.
You know, I was just curious.
Tell me who you are.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm relatively new, Matt. I was curious how well read the biblical authors were. How much cultural cross-fertilization was there when these stories originated? Was it entirely consolidated to the ancient Near East, or do you think that maybe trade routes or other stories or...
That's a good point. I mean, I think scholars have a consensus that the authors know some ancient Near Eastern stories. So they know the story of a flood, and they transform it. They know a story about, they know Babylonian stories of creation because they use some of the same language. There is a speculation by a scholar that there's some interaction between ancient Greece and the biblical authors. I mean, Greece doesn't really enter its golden age until 500. But there's a pre-story, and there's Mycenaean culture, for example. So, you know, there is certainly some consensus that the ancient Near East and its literature has an impact on some of these stories.
And it, naturally, as educated or like, you know, priestly people, like they would know all these stories. They would just be in there on their bookshelf, so to speak. Like they would be familiar with most of the myths or narratives of.
When you say priestly,
I just meant whatever class of person, you know, within the society was the person that did this would have been, you know, probably up here.
right. Yeah, you're making the point about, let's call it the ancient Near East. There's not an isolated group here. And certainly the story of Joseph and his brothers is often seen to be a replica of Egyptian wisdom, the wisdom genre, human beings acting on their own. I mean, the biblical author has an overlay of God, but the story is generated by human interaction. So I think you're right that these authors know something about ancient Near Eastern literature and customs.
One more quick one.
Yeah.
When did play acting enter human civilization? I feel like there's sitting around a campfire and saying this happened, this happened, this happened. It's one person giving an explanation, and it doesn't lend itself so much to dialogue and kind of more the choppy pace, the fast pace of the biblical narrative. But then when there is dialogue, that kind of reminds me more of people getting on a stage and enacting something. And when did that come about? That's distinct from...
What's the that here?
Getting on a stage in like a Greek play, you know, like what we think of a play. A stage or
Interaction,
proscenium.
dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, Greek tragedy begins with a chorus, just a chorus, and then at some point, an individual steps through, and then you have two, and so on. So the origin is the Dionysian religious festival.
What's the date for that?
So Aeschylus is something like Aeschylus fought in the Persian Wars, 480, 470, 460.
Oh, so kind of modern.
BC.
No, well, still.
BC,
Even.
yeah.
Do other world cultures have plays, like stage plays? Like, Yeah.
You would think so, if only that the actors on the stage are types and not necessarily individuals.
Sure, the math.
The mask idea. Yeah. Nietzsche, are you a Nietzsche person?
No. I mean, I don't know.
Birth of Tragedy, his first great book, talks about this. The whole Dionysian and Apollonian, the frenzy and the rational. That's about all I can say.
Okay. I was just curious about
Yeah.
It's
But
just
what's
two
your
modes of storytelling that I'm just curious
about interaction, about people on the stage?
I guess I've spent some amount of time just writing or thinking about stories in general, and
Yes.
I'm really approaching this, I guess, like Alter would, from history of literary and storytelling traditions and where it fits into the whole scheme of things. And that angle on it interests me in particular.
You ought to pick up his book, The Art of Biblical
Sure. Oh, I definitely will.
You know that book. There's
Oh,
also,
I mean, I've heard of it.
no, it's really a wonderful book.
I'm pretty new to this whole endeavor, relatively.
Tell me about you a little bit.
I moved here and I grew up pretty secular, and now that I got married, I'm like, I want to raise my children Jewish, and so I'm educating them.
Good for you. Where did you grow up?
Outside of Boston,
Outside of Boston. And where'd you go to college?
University of Massachusetts.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and now I'm a Midwesterner. My wife isn't Jewish. She's from Indiana.
Indiana? Where?
The northeast corner. Yeah.
Northeast.
Yeah. Nowhere in particular.
I spent some years in Gary, in the Northwest.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Good. Well, good. Gosh, come back. And, yeah, it looks like you're on a little bit of an intellectual adventure.
Very much so. Well, I'm glad I can. Glad we have resources here.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
All right, take care.
Hey, I got your message, and I'm going to get to you so we make a date.
Great. I love these.
Oh, these
Over
are.
my head, but really
Oh,
good.
not at all.
Yeah, no, it's great.
You
There's
do
a fascinating book he's reading. Have you tell me?
World Enemy Number One.
He's an author from Germany, teaches at Rutgers, and he's in favor of what he considered Soviet universalism, and very much opposed to even Winston Churchill as an anti-communist. He doesn't like anti-communists, and this is kind of how deeply embedded the German people became with a fear of Judeo-Bolshevism and the mass killings, which are very horrendous.
Wow.
So it's disturbing.
Well, okay. What's his thesis?
So many of the European countries accepted the idea of Judeo-Bolshevism as something they had to really fear, so they were willing to go to almost any length to slaughter the Jews. If they eliminated the Jews, wouldn't be any danger of Judeo-Bolshevism. It's kind of...
It's sort of a monocausal view.
Yes.
One idea.
Yes.
I think on its face that's a little implausible.
Yeah,
But he's pointing it out.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to review this a little more and then I think write to him.
Oh, good.
Yes.
He'll be glad to hear from you.
Maybe not.
Excellent. Very good. All right. Take care. I'll be in touch.
Modern Hebrew or not, but if I want to say Mashal,
Lemichel, for example.
Yeah, so, and I asked this woman over here, she seems to be.
Oh, yes. Oh, she's an Israeli.
Yeah, okay. And she couldn't tell me how the two are related.
I believe mashal is also the word for Proverbs. Isn't mishle the Hebrew word for the book of Proverbs? So Proverbs, but I can sort of see the connotation of rule, because when you bring an example, you're suggesting that that example, in a way, rules over, I've overstated it, that particular instance. An example standing for something larger than itself.
All right.
But also, I don't see the connection between rule and proverb. Mishle, I'm sure I have the title of that book right. Now, Mishle, yeah. Let's see.
And my Hebrew is very close.
Is it? But you're studying Hebrew, aren't you?
Well, not really studying it. I have studied it. And I was really good at it at one time, but I think I was going out with someone who spoke Hebrew and spoke a lot of Hebrew and really did well. And I could do that with my wife, but she doesn't want to talk and speak Hebrew.
She can speak Hebrew. She's nice.
Yeah, probably at intermediate, advanced intermediate level. That's great.
Mishle Shlomo. See it?
Yeah. Shem, Shem,
And it's in the genitive, Mishle, the Proverbs of Shlomo.
And what is genitive?
Genitive means possession. So the Proverbs of, owned by him. Right, genitive. Yeah, and I don't know the connection. I speculate about it, but I don't know.
Yeah. The other thought I just had was that Jim was saying about complacency. Jim was saying complacency.
Yes.
And sort of likening that to Germany. Of course, there's many other times in the Bible, right, where Jews seem to be complacent and they forget their Judaism, their peoplehood, or their tenets of Judaism. And it just seems to me, whether it's God or whether it's now this conversation has made me think of something else to what we're talking about, or whether it's certain things that God has implanted us with morality. And some people maybe have it stronger than others, some maybe don't even have it implanted at all.
Sociopaths.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just wondering though, is that either directly, because God's directly involved, or indirectly involved because of how people are and God created man? Is that a plan to keep the Jews together? So
Is what a plan? God?
People, is hostility and anti-Semitism a plan to keep the Jewish people together?
Whose plan would it be, by the way? God's?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, whether it would be God, and I don't even know, but it just seems to me there's too many times in history where